if you've been following these videos about Mitchie's book Opening Concepts and the series I've been doing on the opening and backgammon, you'll be used to my little sporting analogies so far. And I'm afraid I'm going to give you another one with this video. It's Proverb 5. Mitchie says to keep at least 3 checkers in the midpoint. And looking at, there's our board. I've just put our starting checkers on our midpoint. That's our 13 point. Our midpoint, it's called midpoint because it's halfway around, I suppose, and a key point. And just like in a sports team, a soccer team, if they only have defenders and attackers and they have a big gap in the middle, in the midfield, they're not going to do well. Any good sports team will have a strong midfield. My son plays midfield for a Gaelic team, and it's the key fulcrum point that everything goes through. If you're into individual sports, you can even say, I was thinking about, core strength is everything these days. So you need to have a strong middle and a strong midpoint. And I suppose that's the essence of this fifth proverb from Mitchie. So that's what we start off with. We start off with 5 checkers in our midpoint. Don't forget, we own that point. If we only have 2 checkers, we own that point. That's our point. It's different to having a blot. And a blot we can be hit and we can lose that point. But once we've got 2 checkers, we own that point. But when we only have 2 checkers in a point, we don't own it for long, and it's a worry. So what this third proverb says is when you have 2 checkers in a point, it's the technical term for it, and I mentioned this in the first video in the series, is it's a stripped point. We still own it. It's not a blot, it is our point. So a stripped point is better than having no point. But by stripped point, it means you're just going to have to give it up pretty soon because you've only got the 2 checkers on it. So Mitchie's Proverb 5 is keep a third checker for as long as possible on your midpoint. And it's a good example of how these proverbs sort of interrelate. There's times you have to break it. So you can't keep it on there forever. But if you can at all, you're aiming to try and keep a third checker on your midpoint. And here's why. When I was kind of learning to play the game, I played with a friend, and he always had this thing that you never give up your midpoint. You must always have a midpoint presence, a midfield presence, just as a soccer team must always have a midfield presence. And he was kind of one of his greatest big mistakes when you play the game was lose your midpoint. You've made a major mistake. But here's an example where we have to lose our midpoint. Because if we're facing this situation, we rolled a 5 and a 3, and you'll see down in the bottom left quadrant, there's a lone black blot there just waiting to be hit with the 3. So we really have to bring one of the checkers down from midpoint with the 3 and hit the black blot and put them on the bar. But now the question is, well, there's nothing else. We have to, with the 5, to make it safe, we have to come down. And now we have a disastrous situation. We've given up all midfield control. All control of the outer board is now in Black's hands. Yes, they have a checker on the bar, and it's going to take them a while to get off the bar, maybe. That's what we're hoping for. And yes, we could block them in. This is not a disastrous situation, but it's not as strong as it could be because Black has complete control of the outer board because we've given up our midpoint, our midfield. And sometimes I said you have to do that, but there's also a danger that you sleepwalk into this position. So that position we faced, we could have avoided being in that position. And I did this position here, I took from Mitchie's book, but it's the second scenario. He starts off with a different scenario. We play with a 6 and a 2. And we have 6 2. It's one move beforehand, before we got into that 5-3 position. It was this 6-2. So with the 6, well, there's a nice resting place for the 6. We take one checker down 6 from a midpoint, and we put it in our bar point, our 7 point. It's safe there. It's a builder there. It offers flexibility there. It's obviously a good thing to do. And then this is what I'm going to talk about sleepwalking. We think, well, what do we do with the 2? Probably safest just to drop another point down from midpoint. And look what we've done. We've stripped our midpoint. We haven't followed Mitchie's Proverb 5, keep at least 3 checkers in the midpoint. And it was Black moved on from their position, their back position, and it was the very next roll that we rolled a 5 and a 3, and we had to take those 2 checkers off the midpoint. So it's so easy to sleepwalk your way into a position where you have to give up the midpoint. And the way to avoid it is very simple. You just follow Michi's Proverb 5, which is keep at least 3 checkers in the midpoint for as long as possible. So this is just an example of it, that the correct move isn't to come down from the midpoint with the 2. It's to go from the back. So let's show you this again. You come down with the 6, but look at our top right, our back checkers. We use the 2 there. We leave 3 checkers on our midpoint, so that if we get the chance of a shot at black now, we have a lot more flexibility hitting them. We're not restricted to having to break up our midpoint. So that was Michi in the book, and that was the only example given in the book. But then in the seminar with Women of Backgammon, he presents this position where we've rolled a 3 and a 1, and you're looking at this and you're wondering what to do with the 3 and a 1. Well, you look at it and say, well, there's no really great 3 there, so we'll bring 1 down from a midpoint. Straight away, that's a What have you done there? You've stripped your midpoint. You haven't followed Proverb 5. Don't take that checker down with a 3. It's unnecessarily weakening your position. Put it back up there. So I'm going to put it back up there and said, look at our top right, our opponent's home board, our back checkers. We 3 of them there. We'll just move 1 of them forward with a 3, and after that, you can't really go wrong. So you might move another checker forward 1, or you can move the spare checker on our 6 point, move that forward 1, or you could even, I always like the safety, the comfort blanket of having an anchor in our opponent's home board. So for me, I'd probably go 24 to 23, our back checker, our very back checker, just move it forward 1 and make myself a little anchor there. Whatever you do, it doesn't really matter. You'll see this in the scoreboards, but it's quite a significant mistake to do anything from 13 or 13 point to our 10 point, because it doesn't follow the proverb and it leaves you stripped in the midfield with only 2 checkers on that point. But here's why it's a problem. Let's take an example and just kind of play it through. So let's say we did come down with the 13-10 and we nudge another checker forward. That's the best of the 13-10 moves. What happens now if our opponent were to roll a 6-4 and they run like that? So our opponent took their rearmost black checker, rolled a 6 and a 4, and they moved it forward onto our 11 point. And now we really have to hit it. We've rolled a 5 and a 2, and we can bring a 2 down from the midpoint and hit it. But know that you could go 10 to 5, but you're leaving a kind of a block behind the 1 point. We're better off just coming down, and we've just done exactly what we don't want to do. We've abandoned the midpoint. Our black now has complete control of the outfield, and we've weakened our position by doing so. So the final position Michi gives, I actually found this very difficult. He put this as a sort of a test yourself question to the Women of Backgammon, and I have to admit I got it very wrong. Now I got the principle right, but my move is wrong, and I'll show you shortly what I mean. But white has rolled double 5s and has a checker on the bar. So the first 5 you're using to take the checker off the bar. And when the group were asked, what would they do with the other 3 5s, there was quite a number of people who said, well, look, let's take a checker down from our midpoint to our 8 point, 13 to 5, and then play 2 of those into our home board, and we've made a good point in our home board. We've made a strong point in our home board, and all looks well. However, think about this proverb, and it's ironic that they chose to do this when he's teaching them about leaving 3 checkers. What you've done there is you've stripped your midpoint. You don't have 3 checkers on your midpoint. The whole point of it is you want to leave that there as much as possible. So let's go back, see if we can do something different. I think this is a very tricky position, to be honest. Much the hardest position I think he did with that group. But you come in with the 5, you hit with the 1. You think, well, you might want to make that safe, and then you might play another 5, maybe out. I haven't actually put an extra checker in here. Maybe play the last checker forward 5, or maybe take a checker down from your midpoint just to make a nice safe move. But again, it's not the best move. The best move is to come in with the 5, and then we hit on the 1 point. We put our opponent in the bar, which is always good. And after that, we can play 2 checkers from our 8 point and bring them onto our 3 point. We don't want to dump all our checkers too far forward, because if you put them too far forward, effectively they're out of the game, and you're playing the game with less players, and you don't want to be doing that. So that's the correct move. So we come off the bar onto a 20 point, we bring 2 down and 6 to 1, but what we don't do, you see, particularly the fourth choice there, 13 to 3 and 8 to 3 means, was what a lot of people suggested that I went through there, where you're taking one off your midpoint unnecessarily. The mistake I made was, this is what I did. I kind of came in, I took 2 checkers from my 8 point. I knew, because the theme of the talk was don't strip your midpoint, not to do that, but I just plunked another checker forward. And I was surprised to find that was the biggest blunder of all, because, and I suppose it's just an instructive as why is such a blunder. If you look at my checker now that it is on the top left quadrant of my blot there, well, if my opponent rolls a 6 or a 3, they have an easy hit, and they've got quite a few numbers that will do that for them. So I've just given them too easy a chance. So what I should have done instead was just come in and hit, by hitting, if you compare that to hitting, I'll put my checker back and just hit the checker on the 1 point, we've taken away half our opponent's go. So they might hit me, but you know what? I'm behind in the race. That's extra ammunition to go back and hit them back with. But it just deprives them of half the roll. So now, as I said, I think that was a very complicated position. Don't panic if you didn't get that. The big, I suppose, message out of it though is don't strip your midpoint. Leave 3 checkers on your midpoint for as long as possible. And it's now time for you to test yourself. This is the final example I'm going to use. Came from Sunny Florida Backgammon Club, and they were kind of discussing this position, and it's time for you to test yourself. How would you play a 3 and a 2 here? And you might like to pause the video, and assuming now that you've unpaused, how you can play the 3 and the 2. Well, we've plenty of checkers in our midpoint here, so a 3 will hit our opponent. We know we want to hit if we can at all, so we're going to hit our opponent with the 3 and put them on the bar. But what do we do with the 2? If you answered, we bring another checker down from our midpoint. I'm going to give you a backgammon detention. The teacher in me wants to come out and give you detention for that, because the theme of this lesson is don't strip your midpoint. Why would you take that checker down and leave only 2 checkers in your midpoint? So instead, we're going to put it back up there. The right move of the 2 is just to bring the checker that hit the black blot just 2 further forward. It's not a particularly flexible position. It's not a particularly attractive position that we're in. It's we haven't won the game yet by any means, and that's why if you were to, it's the correct move. But the other move is only green. Remember, is an error rather than a major blunder. It's not a blunder if you wanted to bring the 2 down, but by quite a margin, the right play is not to strip the 13 point. And that's it. That's it for Mitchie's Proverb 5. There's nothing more to it. There weren't a lot of examples out there to show you, but really I think it's just something to bear in mind, that stripping the midpoint weakens your coverage of the outfield and weakens your midfield position, which you just want to try and avoid doing. Now, they're the first 5 proverbs. Over the last few lessons, we've looked at the first 5 proverbs. They kind of come in the book as a little set of introductory proverbs. The next 3 cover attacking play. And there's kind of 3 proverbs that go together about attacking play, and I'll have videos about them coming out shortly.